Hi everyone, and welcome to the Corriedale reviews. I'm going to be reviewing this week's Emmerdale episodes, which aired from the 30th of July to the 3rd of August, and it was a really good week that we had on the Dales. We had our third flashback episode. A new thing that Emmerdale have been doing is to give characters a bit of a backstory. They've started doing these flashback episodes, which I think are really, really good, really entertaining, really well made, and it's such a treat whenever they come up. We had Graham was the main focus of this one. The first one was about faith, the second was about charity. This one was about Graham, and I think it was very important we had this because it's nice to find out a bit about this character's past. I mean, hopefully he's going to come back because at the end of the week, midway through the week, he decided to admit himself into a clinic, and Joe fired him because, just a bit of advice: if you're working for someone, don't get drunk in front of them and punch them repeatedly in the face. Might get you fired. Graham unfortunately fell into that trap. He's been fired from Home Farm. He is at a clinic now. He's going to be there for a while, but I'm really hoping he comes back because he's such an intriguing character, such an interesting character. There's just so much to him. The relationship that he has with Joe is very interesting to watch. The fact that they both rely on each other. And Joe's a very interesting character himself because I'm not sure if any of you have seen this series. It's quite a niche series aired on BBC Three called How Not to Live Your Life. If you've not seen it, I would definitely recommend giving it a watch because it is a very, very funny series. But in it, the title character is called Don, who is a man in his 20s, much like Joe, although I think Don's a bit older. But the thing is, Don just can't look after himself, and it's not because of any mental incapability. It's just the fact he's just very lazy, and so he's got he's got a carer, even though he doesn't really need a carer. He's got a carer in Eddie who sort of just looks after him, which is a bit like Graham. When we see Joe without Graham in the shop picking up bolognese sauces, not really knowing which one to pick. And this seems to be how he manages to get Priya to be the new Graham, which is interesting, and that's what I think that they said that in the show about Priya. Oh, Priya's the new Graham, which is quite funny. But as well, I think this will be interesting, not on a permanent basis, but just for the while Graham's away, to see what happens between Priya and Joe, if anything, and if Debbie's going to be, I'm a bit jealous of this, or I don't know, I don't approve of this, or whether she's fine with it. Maybe she could get Priya to do a few jobs for her as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Priya and Joe, because Joe was going to hire Priya a while ago, and then something happened, I think, to do with Debbie, and Priya was very offended, rightfully so, because Joe said some horrible things to her. But Priya's happy to work for Joe. She's written her own job description, which is, again, very amusing. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully Graham comes back. Hopefully this is just a temporary solution to Graham not being there. We just have Priya as Graham for the next few weeks, and then Graham comes back and it's all is forgiven, is what I'm hoping, because Graham is a very good addition to the cast and a very interesting character, and one that would be missed if he wasn't to come back. Although I'm very sceptical he wouldn't come back, because if you're going to do a flashback episode for a character, you're probably going to want to keep that character in the show. You're probably not just going to do that and get rid of them. But yeah, so yeah, very, very interesting that. But now we can move on to Paddy and Chaz, and they still have this awful, awful situation with their baby, where they are dreading the day where she's born, because they know that she is going to die hours after she's born, which is absolutely tragic. And even if she even makes it to birth, because we had the whole thing on Friday's episode where they went to a scan and it took ages to find the baby's heartbeat. And it was really well directed, because we've seen Paddy and Chaz trying to make all the preparations that they possibly can before the baby is born, if the baby even will make it to birth. And it was a way of showing that despite the fact that they've prepared themselves for it, nothing can prepare them for the inevitable moment when their baby is going to die, because they know their baby's going to die. And I think that was really well shot, well written scene in the hospital. Very useful and necessary scene that showed us that they can't prepare for it. Even they appointed Marlon and Liv as bodyguards, as godparents for their baby, because they can't give the baby the christening with the godparents, but they thought, well, let's give the baby some godparents. Let's give Margarita some godparents. And I thought, yeah, I think that was a really nice moment, and we had a bit of humour in it as well, as you can tell by the card I picked. We had Marlon impersonating a Dalek, which was the wallpaper that I picked for this review, because I thought it was very nice. It's a very good way of adding a bit of lightheartedness and a bit of humour to a pretty dark and bleak storyline, really, when you really think about the weight and the gravity of what is happening. So I do appreciate how Emmerdale are able to do that. Moving on, Samson found out the truth about his mum. He found out that because his mum had cancer, she didn't die directly from the cancer. She was terminally ill and decided to end her own life because of the fact that she couldn't carry on, really. So it was nice to see Emmerdale doing the assisted suicide storyline, and it was nice to see how Samson reacted, because obviously his initial reaction is, well, you help my mum kill herself, then you killed her, you're a murderer. And then because he's young, he doesn't really understand the desperation of the whole situation and the impossibility that his dad was faced with in making the decision to either help his wife die peacefully or live but suffer for who knows how long, but not long. So it was very nice to see them revive that storyline from all those years ago, because obviously Samson was too young, being a baby, to understand what was going on. So yes, I was really appreciative of the way that they were able to do that. I felt like it was the right time for them to do that. They've been sitting on the storyline for a while. They've been obviously sitting on, we can spring this sometime. They've decided to keep their cards for, I don't know, about 11 years. I don't know how old Samsung is. I can't remember how long ago that was when that happened. But they've decided to keep it for now, and I think it was a very, very good decision, because I'm sure that a lot of the writers would have been as keen as anything to get the storyline on the screens as soon as they possibly could. But it was good that they managed to wait a bit and save it for the right time, which I think was now, because it's not a point where Samson's old enough to completely understand it on his own. It's the point where he's at the age where he can understand bits of it, but at the same time he wants to question it, and he's not going to be 100% on side because of his the whole childlike moral sense of morality that exists in his brain, the whole simplistic morality. And he's got that whole thing about how Sarah had cancer and survived it, and it's the understanding of that not all cancers can be survived. Some cancers are terminal, other ones can be treated, can be cured with chemotherapy. Well, cured isn't the right word. I believe you have to say in remission, because cancers can come back, unfortunately. But the point is, not all cancers are terminal, but some are, and I don't think Sam's son understood that some cancers are terminal, like the cancer that his mum had, where there was no light at the end of the tunnel. She was going to die. So was it end her life quickly and painlessly, or carry on for a month or two maximum, suffering in pain? And it was interesting to see Sam's son, because he's young enough to not completely appreciate that whole dilemma that his mum and his dad were faced with at the time. But we have Lydia. Now, Lydia is a very, very funny character a lot of the time. I'll always remember one of her first appearances with Paddy, where she came on a bit strong with him and she said, "I'm going to take us to a lawnmower museum." I'll always remember that line because I thought it was very, very fun. That was a very funny episode, actually. She appeared in. We had a bit of David and Tracy at a pub quiz as well. And then Tracy just knows nothing. But it was a very funny episode, and that's the first time I remember seeing Lydia. And she's really developed a lot. She's joined the village now. She's been integrated into the whole community, which I really like, because I think Lydia's a very, very useful character to have, and normally a bit of comedy relief. She's a bit like Mary in Coronation Street. She is... She sort of lightens a lot of the things up. She's a humorous, entertaining character, but at the same time can have serious moments and serious storylines, like the one she's got at the moment, where when Samson pushed her down the stairs, the doctor found a mole that could possibly be melanoma. So Lydia could possibly have cancer as well, which would be absolutely dreadful for Sam and Samson, because of the fact that they've already lost one person they love to cancer, and there is a possibility that another loved one could also be going down the same route, which must be absolutely heartbreaking for them if it turns out that Lydia does have melanoma, have cancer. So I'm really hopeful that she doesn't, and at least if she does, that it is treatable and they don't kill her off, because I think that would just be too hard on Sam and Samson and the whole Dingles. So that's my thoughts on that. So we've got Ross as well. He's there's a possibility he's back on the gear. He went to sell all of Rebecca's cars because, as far as he's concerned, she's just up sticks and left the country, although that's not really the case. We'll get to that later on. He sold all the cars to someone, a drug lord. He spotted all the gear. The drug lord said, "Maybe we can sort out an alternative form of payment." Ross was like, no, I'll just have the cash. But he managed to get a little bit of powder. And yes, so I think we're going to be seeing a bit of Ross battling with addiction, which, to be honest, I'm not entirely happy about, because we see a lot of these storylines, and it was only just recently we had his whole addicted to painkillers storyline, and I just don't know if I want to go through that again. But I suppose that the writers are trying to say he is an addict and addicts can't cure themselves on their own or something like that. So maybe it's something to do with that temptation is always too great for characters. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're saying that Ross is powerless and he needs to go and get help because he can't overcome drugs on his own, which I'm torn between whether that's an awful message for people addicts watching, because they might think, well, I was an addict and I gave up on my own. But if you're saying that addicts can't give up on their own, maybe I can't either. So maybe that's an awful message, or maybe that's a very useful message by convincing addicts that they do need help, even if they manage to quit cold turkey, because of the fact that temptation's always there. So is it good or is it bad? I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see what happens next week to find out whether that was a good move for the writers to make Ross relapse or a bad move from the writers. I mean, it seems as though the writers aren't a big fan of people giving up things on their own, because obviously we had Graham, who had been sober for 7 years, just randomly, I'll have a drink, and then just spirals out of control like that. So just very randomly, he's given up for 7 years and then boom, back on it, and then just wrecked everything. So yes, is it a good move? Is it a bad move? We will find out. So before we move on to the other big storyline that's happening in Emmerdale with Rebecca, we'll just briefly mention Laurel, Bob and Brenda. How Bob's left the cafe because Brenda's struggling financially. As I said, I think it's too early to really know where this storyline's going to go. Is it just saying that Bob and Brenda's life is falling apart without them? As I said in a early review, I did like Bob and Brenda together, but I also quite like Bob and Laurel together now as well. I like the idea of Bob being with Laurel and Brenda being with Doug, except for the fact it's obviously a bit awkward with Doug being Laurel's father, which is a little bit strange, but I think the two of them pair up nicely. I didn't really like Doug with Diane, apart from early on when they were together, when Diane had cancer and Doug was really there for her, and Doug was saying all the right things to her, and I think Doug's support really helped Diane get through everything. But she was just horrible to him in the past few months and beyond. Even a year ago, where she said her perfect idea of a holiday was a holiday away from him. So yeah, from then on, I was never really a fan of Diane and Doug together. So I'm glad that the writers did split them up, because I just don't think that they did pair well together. I think Doug pairs well with Brenda, and I think Bob does pair well with Laurel. I did like Bob and Brenda together though, and it is a shame that Bob and Brenda is over, and I think it should stay over. I think that it should stay Bob, Laurel, and hopefully we will get Brenda and Doug as well. So yes, that's pretty much it. All it is was the cafe is going under. Bob's left the cafe, and I imagine we'll find out more about what's going on next week. But obviously, the big thing that's going to happen next week is Rebecca will be found in the cabin. And it appears, so if you don't want any spoilers for next week, I'm going to thank you right now for listening. And because I think I've said everything I need to say about the rest of the week. So if you don't want any spoilers, thank you all very much for listening to Corriedale reviews, but I would recommend ending the video here. So if you don't mind spoilers, I will say this. Rebecca will be found in the cabin next week by a group of the kids from Emmerdale. I think we'll have April and Kathy and Arthur and Heath all there, and they're going to be in the cabin. I think they're going to be supervised by Misty, of all people, and they're going to find Rebecca, and hopefully they'll be able to get her out of the cabin alive, because I really don't want her to get killed off. I really want her to be able to escape. I'm getting pretty fed up of Lachlan at the moment. I want Lachlan to get caught. I think we've had enough of Lachlan now. I think we need to put a stop to him, get Rebecca out, get her back to her son, and get Lachlan. I think he needs to go to jail, really. He definitely needs help, but he is definitely some sort of sociopath. So, yeah, a bit of jail for Lachlan would be much appreciated, Emmerdale. But yes, I hope that Rebecca is found, and someone can actually break her out of the cabin. That, obviously, how do you destroy chains? The thing is, what I would do to escape that, if it was me, is the chains will be pretty hard to destroy, but they're being fastened by a load-bearing wooden beam, which again would be very difficult to destroy, but not as difficult as destroying actual metal chains. So I think what Rebecca really needs to be focusing on is destroying the wooden beam. Obviously, because it is load-bearing, or seems to be load-bearing, there is the risk of the house collapsing on her, but she's running out of food, she's running out of water. Lachlan looks like he's going to kill her. She's got to take that risk and do whatever it takes to get out of there and survive. And hopefully, if we get Misty to the cabin, hopefully she'll have a phone or something and be able to call the proper authorities, get a locksmith or something, and get Rebecca out of there. That's what I'm hoping. And get Lachlan brought to justice. Earlier on this week, Lachlan didn't steal. He took Rebecca's baby, his cousin, for Rebecca to see him, just so that Rebecca could say goodbye. But obviously Rebecca refused to say goodbye. She doesn't want to say goodbye to her child, which I can completely understand. She doesn't want to have to say goodbye. If there's a way out, she wants out. She wants to escape. She wants to be around him. She will not say goodbye. She refuses to go. And I really like that attitude. I think that she's doing well. She's trying to manipulate him, trying to manipulate Lachlan into letting her go. And Lachlan seems to be considering it. Hopefully, what I'm hoping for is if Lachlan does let her go, that she immediately informs the proper authorities of what he's done, because then I think it just gets a bit too much for him. He's got too much to explain, and he'll go down to jail. Nice bit of jail time for him. Jail time. So very much looking forward to next week's episodes. It was a bit of a shame to not have any Rebecca until next week, because obviously that is the storyline that a lot of people are watching Emmerdale for at the moment, is to find out. That's the main focus of the series, is what's going to happen here, what's going to happen next. It's been a lot of the cliffhangers over the last couple of weeks have been ended in the cabin, because obviously this is the main focus at the moment. This is the main storyline. This is the A story. This is the show's A story. So obviously we want to find out. We want as much of the A story as possible, because that's the one that a lot of us watching it are focused on. So I'm hoping that we go to the cabin at some point next week, because Lachlan's away. So hopefully we will get to Rebecca before Lachlan comes back. But you know the Deus Ex Machina of Soapland, where as soon as a character's about to be saved, the villain will inexplicably turn up. So I'm imagining that some sort of Deus Ex Machina will come up with Lachlan just randomly appearing. Oh, just checking in. Oh, stop that. No, don't unchain her, people. Lachlan's very clever in the way he does pick the right things to say to people to cover his tracks. He was very clever with the police, how he managed to, when he was being interviewed about Jerry's death, because they found out he was lying to them. He was very, very clever with the way he conned them into, he lied to them, the reason why he didn't declare the text. But I think that is just a reason why the police have to punish people for lying to them, because of the fact that it is suspicious that he lied to the police, and now we can see why it's suspicious that he lied to the police. So, yes, very interesting week in the Dales, but I'm looking forward to finding out what happens next week on the Dales. If I ever said Cobbles instead of Dales, I do apologise. I didn't get around to watching any Coronation Streets this week, so because I didn't watch any, I can't review them. So I do apologise for that. If you were waiting for a Coronation Street review, you will get one next week. I'll do a bumper review of the 2 weeks on the Cobbles. But until then, thank you very much for listening to my rambling once again. I hope you enjoyed the week as much as I did, and I will see you next week for an Emmerdale and a Coronation Street review. Thank you, and make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment, anything that I might have missed, or anything that you wish I'd gone over, or just to say that you think that I'm doing a good job reviewing and you really enjoyed listening. It really means a lot. I love a comment. I love reading through comments. And subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. That really means a lot as well, to see subscribers come up. It really means a lot to think of people listening to me rambling away about my opinion on a soap. But yes, thank you very much for listening. And yeah, like, comment and subscribe. Thank you very much.